Hello guys and welcome to Dark Horse FM, and in today's video we're going to be looking at defensive corners in FM 2022. I'm going to share with you the defensive corner routines that I normally use in FM that have somehow helped me get good results in this game. In this year's version of the game, I've noticed that I've considered a ridiculous amount of goals from corners in FM 2022, and even in previous ball manager games as well. I've noticed that in the course of multiple saves that I've played in this year's games, I've learned in FM 2022 that it's less about the routine and more about the group of players that you have and how you can set them up defensively to get the best out of your players in defensive corners, for example. So it's also important to note that these defensive corners, that in fact defensive set pieces in general, they're a great opportunity for you to hit the opposition on the counter attack. So if you can set them up very well, you can take advantage of the opposition space left behind and then hit them on the break for a counter attack. So we're going to get into it and see how it works, and I'm going to show you how we're going to go about creating a set piece routine for my Real Madrid save that I'm currently using. By the way, I'm using a flat 4-4-2 tactic in Real Madrid, and I'm falling in love with no instructions whatsoever. That's like the new order of the day now. So you can see there's a sweeper, keeper, flat back four, one ball playing defender, one central defender, deep line playmaker. Ideally this guy is normally a central midfielder on defend duty, but I just used Camavinga in there. That's why I switched to a Carrilero for some. But this is basically the tactic: one IW, one winger, one advanced forward, and a complete forward, and it tends to work. I've got good results with that, and funny enough, I haven't actually set up set pieces for this tactic. I've not set up set pieces for my Madrid team, so I'm going to do that. This is like the best example to actually do that with this Madrid side, so that's what I'm going to do in this video. These are the results that we've had so far, and I did lose to PSG 4-0, and that's something I'm going to want to forget very soon, but that's about it. So first thing I normally do when going into this particular series, by the way, if you're new to the channel, remember to hit the subscribe button and also to get also to turn on notifications so you can get notifications when new videos come up. And the first thing I normally do when I go to the tactics screen is to actually go to the squad screen and then look at the players that we have. I can filter the view to actually show me players based on attributes, right? So I'm going to look for player attributes, and then we're going to look for their physical attributes first of all, because I'm going to look for the players that have good height and good heading abilities. So looking at, I went to physical, I'm supposed to go to technical abilities, I'm sorry. So going into technical abilities, we can then find the players with good heading, filter those players. Where is it? First, long pass, heading. I found it. So looking at the players with good heading, we can then scroll all the way to the top, and then we can see that Luka Jovic has heading 15, and Eder Militao and Benzema as well. So these are players I'm going to look to like pay attention to them in defensive corners. For some reason, Benzema as well. I'm going to want to keep him in front, but Eder Militao is just one standout player there that I can see, and then Eder Militao is to some extent 6'1", so he's not the tallest, but if he's one of the tallest players in Real Madrid, we're going to have a problem with our set piece defending corners. But we're going to see how we're going to go about that today. So first thing I normally do is to look at the players, look at the physicality of our players, look at their player height, and also I'm looking at the squad now. Basically looking at my first squad. Thibaut Courtois is 6'6", Odriozola is 5'9", so he's not going to be defending in the defensive corners, and then Nacho Monreal is 5'11". So I just realized in my set of players that I don't have very tall players in my team. So setting up the set pieces again, there's going to be a different way I'm going to go about setting up these set pieces than what I had in mind initially when I started recording this video. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. Going further and further into the squad, we've already seen Eder Militao. Looking at Asensio is 6'0", and Borja Mayoral is 6'0" as well. So I've not had any of my players that are 6'2" or 6'3". So there's no standout tall player per se. Everybody's just 5'9". So there are a lot of small players in the squad. Toni Kroos is 6'0", so not the tallest of teams. Then I have Eduardo Camavinga. Camavinga himself is also 6'0". So this is something really tricky to look at. But that's basically the rough idea of the squad that I have. So once you get the idea of the players that you have and their player height, I've already tried to look at their heading ability. The next thing I'm going to look at is the players' physical attributes, which is what I started with at first. Looking at the physical attributes, I'm going to look for the players that are the fastest in the team. In Real Madrid, my current team, I actually have Kylian Mbappe. That's the one I signed on a free transfer, by the way. There's Vinicius, Mendy, and Fede Valverde. These are the players that have good acceleration. So these are the guys that you're going to want to move the ball back to move the ball from defense to attack. So these are going to be the players that will help you out in your counter attack. And so the second group of players you're going to look for is the players with their physical attributes. You're going to look for those players, and then once you have them all tailored down, the next group of players you're going to look for is your technical players. So these are the players that I go for last. These are going to be the players that will take the corners for us, right? Technique, Kylian Mbappe 17, that's for finishing. What I'm looking for is corners. Filtering by corners, Toni Kroos and Luka Modric are the best corner takers in the team. Marco Asensio is in there, Brahim Diaz, but he's on loan, he's not going to be participating. Then there's Kenneth Soler and Theo. And then there's Lucas Vazquez. So the main people we're going to focus on is Luka Modric and Asensio and Toni Kroos. Those are the main corner takers that we're going to be using in the squad. Looking at the players with the best long range of long passing range, Toni Kroos and Marco Asensio, 17 for long passing, and passing accuracy, they're right up. In fact, Madrid is stacked with players, I know. So, but just having that in mind gives us an idea of what we're going to do and how we're going to set up the tactic and who's going to go where. Now that we have a rough idea about how my players are physically, technically, and what's the last word? Physically, technically, and I think that's just the two, and their physical attributes basically. We go into the corner routines and try and set it up. So looking at the corner routines that we have, the first thing, like I did for the attacking corners, is to move all the players in defense and then move them out. One thing that I'm going to mention while moving all these players out in some point is to remember that when it comes to defending corners, when it comes to defending in general, there are two ways you can actually defend in modern football, and that's using either you play by zonal marking or you play by man-to-man marking, or man marking for short. Those are the two ways you can go about setting up defensive corner. Obviously, I can't move the goalkeeper, that would be tragic. But once you have everything set up, you can now decide how you want to set up your players. You have the technical ability. You can decide how we're going to go about setting up either zonal marking or man marking. There's an alternative, which is the third option that I normally use, which is using a hybrid version of zonal marking and type marking combined in one system. But that's probably much later in the video. I'm going to show you how we're going to set that up. So now with zonal marking, the meaning of zonal marking is that players are going to be forced, not exactly forced, so players are going to be assigned to specific regions in the defensive area. That's how it is. So you're going to set a group of players to mark a specific region in space in your defense. So you can ask a player to cover this region here, or you can ask another player to cover this region in the far post or the near post areas. This is the near post and this is the far post. You can also ask a player to cover the center of the box, like pulling one of your defenders, for example, and then ask him to cover, that's the zonally mark, the 6-yard box center, just be in this place. So he's going to be responsible for anything that comes into this area here. If you move him to the far post or the near post in this case, he's going to be responsible for anything that's going on. So if there's a player lurking behind him, he's not going to want to mark that player because he's going to be moving out of his zone. So unless you have somebody else that is in this position here to take care of that zone. Where's my second center half? And then this player is going to have to deal with that person. That's the way zonal marking works. So this is your responsibility, this is your responsibility. You're going to work in this role, and then this guy is going to work in this role. But with man-to-man marking, you're just going to set the instruction that you want one of your players, I can just get him to be selected. You can go into this option at the bottom right here and then choose man marking. You can say, where is it? Man mark, player mark. In Football Manager 2022, by the way, it's called player mark. Well, that's the man marking instruction. So what happens in man marking is the player is in this zone. Even though he's standing here, he's going to mark the closest player to him in this position, and then he's going to follow that player wherever that player runs into. That's the way man marking is going to work. So you can set a group of players, like if I pull my right center back into this position, it asks me, do I want him to just go back? Do I want him to play in the player mark, as to be as a type marking, or just to go back and be in space and then just be there and cause a problem? Or I want him to mark a particular player, so you can just turn on the player mark. So that's the way man marking works. With setting up the defensive routines, when you're setting up a man marking system, most of your players are going to be they're going to have the man marking, that's the player mark instruction, all set up for them. While with zonal marking, you're going to choose specific players to stand in specific regions and then try to defend the corner in that manner. I'd like to use this opportunity to give a big shout out to Ben McManus, one of my subscribers, who is the inspiration for this video. He actually urged me to go ahead and make a defensive approach after I already made the attacking corners approach, how to set up attacking corners. Ben McManus actually urged me to also go ahead and do one for the defensive corner routines as well, which turns out the attacking corner routines, the setup was actually quite useful. So thanks a lot for guys. Thanks a lot for that, guys. Since I know that I don't have the tallest players in Real Madrid, trying to select players to mark the tall players in the team may not be very helpful because they're always going to win the ball in the air. So player marking, asking player to mark tallest player may not be a very useful approach that I can go for. But we're going to still have to try to create something that is quite helpful for Real Madrid. So first of all, I'm going to pick the fullbacks to try and align or try and allocate regions for where the fullback is going to stay. So in the zonal marking system, what I would likely do is just drag the fullback and give him a near post role. So he is going to be on the near post. So this is the right back. You can have this because this is his role. Obviously, having the right back closer to the right hand side is quite helpful. That might mean that you just have him stand on the near post and be beside the goalkeeper, and then try to stop those near post headers. And then look, you can also attach the fullback on the left fullback, attach him to the other corner, to the other side of the other far post side of the net, I guess, keeping them at the corners. So having one fullback here and then the other fullback here is actually a good way to go. That's a good way to start with your zonal marking. And then the next option, we're going to try and read where if you observe the way Football Manager 2022 has been, or you've been watching your opposition once in a while, you can see where they will likely head the corners to. And if the team is fond of playing corners to the near post, you can pull one of your players and ask them to zonally mark the near post center, or you can ask them to zonally mark the near post and try and stop those crosses from coming in and trying to stop the header in the near post. The thing with zonal marking, when you're adding someone to the near post or to a strategic region where you know the AI is likely to play the ball to, you need to have a tall player in that role. With Real Madrid, I know I do have players that are 6'0", and nobody here is 6'5". Attaching one player here might be helpful, or putting him in the near post center might also be helpful. The next thing you want to do, since it is the near post corner and you have the near post somewhat covered in this end, and then the corner is coming this way, the next thing you want to do is try and include who the other zonal, or try and select where the other zones are going to be covered. Now, where can I add the central defender on the left hand side? Ideally, this can be my left hand center back, where I'm going to include him. I could put him to stay at the far post center and try and stop the in case the corner is played to the far post. That's another option. So you can try and block the far post and then have the player stop the ball from getting to the far post. The next place is going to be is try to cover the center, and look for where in case the AI plays the ball to the center, you can pick your next tall player. I have a 6'1" player here in Casemiro. You can bring Casemiro to play in the center, the near post center position here, and try and stop the ball in case it's crossed into the center. So that's the way you're asking your players to play in specific zones. You're trying to give them specific zones to mark. And then the next player I want to look for is my best passer of the ball. I'm going to fill in the other roles quickly, but the core of the zonal marking system has already been put in place. I'm trying to cover the near post and the far post, and I'm using center because I want it to be a bit narrow and try and block these places. But you can do it in many different ways, really. You can ask them to stay far post and ask this other guy to stay far post and then leave a gap in between. I think this allows the goalkeeper come for crosses if that's possible. He can come and pick up the ball, and then there isn't a crowd in front of him. There's one player on either side of him anyway. So that's one way to put it, and you can also put it in this other way where you can have them a bit more to be more narrow or closer together to themselves. Like I said, the next one is the central midfielder. This is Luka Modric. This might also be Toni Kroos, by the way, but this player is the best passer in the team. So you're going to want to have him at the edge of the area in case the ball falls out, and then you have somebody you can use to start the counter attacks. The remaining other players are going to be players that will be useful for the counter attack, and ideally I'm going to use Kylian Mbappe as an example. This is Karim Benzema. Benzema can also play as at the edge of the area and then be a good be of help to Luka Modric to try and get that, or try and start that counter attack. Or you can also add him in. Looking at his height, let me just guess, he is also 6'1". So if you throw Benzema in here and just ask him to go back, that way he's not allocated to any zone, but he's just there in the defense and trying to help the team out defensively. So those are two ways you can go about it, but somewhat he's still zonally marking, but he's going to be like anywhere you want him to be at random. So you can have Benzema here in the just going back with no specific zonal marking instruction, or you can have him play at the edge of the box as well, so alongside Luka Modric, and help, so you can help start counter attacks. But I'm going to leave him here to just go back And then we have Mbappe and the two white players. Looking at the first white player here, he is 5'8", so he's not going to be winning any headers. Lucas Vazquez. Assuming Lucas Vazquez is the player that I'm going to use in this role, I'm going to ideally leave him in this position to try and play alongside Kylian Mbappe. But since he's the right player, he's the player on the right hand side, I'm going to drag him into this position and then leave Mbappe as the central attacking source in this sense. Vinicius Jr. is the other player, but he is 5'10", so he's not also going to be winning any balls in the air in defense from my. But ideally, I can pull Vinicius Jr. into the edge of the area here, and then we can see that his attributes. So you can see he has anticipation, acceleration, concentration. So he might help out Luka Modric here, since we have two players already up front prepared for the corner attacking, and that's one way you can set the team up for zonal marking. Defensive corners, zonally marking. We're going to create something for type marking now, and player marking, man marking, and then we're going to see how that goes as well. Now for man marking, you can start the same way. You can also include the left back and the right back, but if you notice, I'm actually on the left hand side now, so I'm going to create this one on the left hand side. So starting with the fullback, we can have the left back still cover the left hand side, and then have the right back also still cover the right hand far post, and then the left hand far post, they're just standing on by the post there. Most people don't always like using two players by the post. Sometimes I even use one player by the post. Maybe you can have, since the goalkeeper is likely going to cover his near post, you can have one player on the far post and then allow the goalkeeper cover the near post. But I'm going to use two players here and have one player on either side of the post. Then the next thing we're going to do is to find our tall players. Like I mentioned, or like we've seen, Madrid don't have that. Madrid do not have many of those. So the first thing we're going to do is to move Jesus Vallejo. He's not likely going to be the player that's going to play. This might be Eder Militao. But going into this zone now, hold on a minute. Let me go and drop Eder Militao for Jesus Vallejo. Come on out. That just gives us a better idea of what we're trying to do. So looking here, Eder Militao, good, 6'1". Eder Militao is going to play. We're going to just pull him into, since he's a right centre back, I'm going to just hold on to that. Find the left centre back. This is Nacho Monreal, right? Just pull Nacho into this space here and then ask him to player mark. Nacho is 6 foot, he's 5'11", so asking him to mark a tall player is it's not something that is going to be, I'm going to recommend, because he may not win the ball in the air since he's 5'11". The next player we're going to include, Casemiro. He is tall enough from what I've noticed, 6'1", yes. Pull Casemiro in there as well, ask him to player mark. And then the next player we're going to include is Eder Militao. Eder Militao, also ask him to player mark. Then there's 3 more players, right? Luka Modric, he is 5'8", so he's going to be at the edge of the box, just like we did for the zonal marking. So we have Modric in place here. The striker here is Luka Jovic. He is 5'11", and then we have, of course, this Karim Benzema. It might be Kylian Mbappe at some point, so just give me a second to go and pull Mbappe in. Just pull Benzema to Jovic's position and then have Kylian Mbappe. Where is he? He's injured. Well, okay, still coming. So now we have Karim Benzema and Kylian Mbappe. That's ideally the strike pairing I've been using most of the season. So now that we have those two in place, well, remember we've put Modric at the edge of the area, and then we have Lucas Vazquez on the right hand side. He's going to be on the right hand side as opposed to the left. He can stay forward because they're not the tallest, him and Vinicius Jr. anyway, so they might not really help out defensively. But we've already agreed that Vinicius Jr. can play at the edge of the area as well and help Luka Modric start counter attack. So there are many ways you can go about doing this, but with player mark, with man marking, like we've said, we just include these 3 players as player mark. Now we realize that Eder Militao and Casemiro are both 6'1", so we're going to look for the player with the highest, or with the higher jumping reach and the higher strength. For example, looking at Eder Militao, he has strength 15 and jumping reach 15, and then Casemiro has strength 17, bravery 16 as well, jumping reach 13, so he's not the best jumper. And we're going to ask that player to, now we have a dilemma. I wanted to make the player with the better jumping reach to be the player that's going to mark the tall player of the opposing team. But since Casemiro is the strongest and he has bravery as well, I'm going to ask Casemiro to mark tall player. Although his jumping reach is not the best, his jumping reach is 13, but he has higher bravery and higher strength, so I'm going to ask him to mark tall player. That's something you can do. You can also leave everybody on player mark as well. but I'm going to include this to try and get their tallest, in case the team has a tall player in their lineup. That means that player is going to be Casemiro's responsibility. Now in attack, we have 3 players, and that's Karim Benzema. We can see that Karim Benzema is also a player that, well, he's not the fastest in acceleration. So like I mentioned, you can also ask Benzema to help Modric out and start the counter attacks, and then you have Vinicius Junior stay forward alongside Mbappe and Lucas Vazquez. Even Lucas Vazquez, even though he's not the fastest, as you can see, his pace is not quite there. We can pull Lucas Vazquez and ask him to close down the corners. Or you can also, since he's not the tallest, I don't want him to be in the box to try and defend corners as well. He can be a nuisance if you actually add him in here, because he's not marking anybody per se, but he's not going to win any headers as well. So sometimes, for experiment's sake, you can try it if you want. But I'm going to ask him to maybe close down the corners, but he may not want to help out in the attack or be effective in the attack because he's not the fastest. So I'm going to have 3. You can have 3 strikers up front, or you can have just the 2 and then have one other person like Karim Benzema help Luka Modric in to start the counter attacks once it's all done. And then that's how you can set up a man marking system. It's quite open as it is, but in the game it kind of works very differently. So with the hybrid system, I've actually saved the man marking system, but with the hybrid system, it's a combination of having player mark, that's man marking, and zonal marking at the same time. You can see that I've pulled out the left back from the corner post and then allowed the goalkeeper to actually close down the near post, and then have the left back be in the zonal position of the near post center. You can also push him to the near post, that's to the near post, what do you call this zone again? This is the near post and then the near post center. So you can have him stay by the near post or by the near post center just to be far away from the goalkeeper. So you can have him stand by this near post. And then you can also have this player is already central. That's have one central defender here and then one on the far post. So you can have them this way to be a lot wider. Anyhow you decide to put it anyway, but that's the way you can set it up. Get 3 players to play on zonal mark, and then you have two players that are man marking. That's the tall player, that's Casemiro, still marking the tall player. In case there is no tall player, he's just going to play a mark. And then you have 1 player, Karim Benzema, being also helping to play the man marking system. You now have a combination of man marking and zonal marking in one set piece routine. So that's like a hybrid. And then you notice that the strikers and the playmaker, I'm going to call it Luka Modric, or it could be Toni Kroos, by the way. You have those 3 players still waiting in attack. So the changes is only in this defensive role here, and then the counter attack is still open to work once the ball is loose and then Luka Modric has it. You can start a counter attack knowing that Vinicius Junior and Kylian Mbappe are right up there trying to start those, or trying to finish up those counter attacking opportunities. So that's the way I set up corner routines. Basically, for any team, there are many ways you can go about doing this, but that's just one way I've done it for Real Madrid. And looking at the squad that they have, funny enough, at the start of the video, I didn't know that Real Madrid do not have that many tall players. So this corner routine could be very different if they actually did have tall players in unique positions. But then I realized that in Football Manager 2022, it's always a blank canvas. You can literally create anything that you want. There isn't a set in stone rule about going about maybe set piece routines or tactics. Like when you're speaking of tactics, it's even the same thing for the current tactic I'm using now, because my first season I didn't really do quite well with Madrid, although we won a few trophies, but we didn't score as many goals as I wanted to score. I love scoring a lot of goals. But then I realized that I'm going to start something completely blank in FM22. That's to use a flat 4-4-2 with no instructions, and then start filling in the instructions as the team continues to play as well as I want. Basically, with the force opposition outside, I can play with standard defensive line. It won't make much difference. I will still win some games. And then I realized that players do tend to play well if you put them in, if you just have a good system in place. So I like this one I'm using. There are no instructions for any of these players. No instructions whatsoever. But it is I started with the flat 4-4-2. And I realized that Vinicius Junior cannot play as a winger, so I just changed him to inverted winger. I left this one as the winger. Both players were fullbacks on automatic duty. And then I realized that Mendy can get forward, so I just swapped him to attack, and then I left this player on support duty. Both of them were central defenders, but I know that David Alaba is normally a guy that is here. Where is Alaba, by the way? Alaba, where you did? So David Alaba is normally my ball-playing defender. You can see the link has already come up. Alaba and Eder Militao. I can use Eder Militao as a ball-playing defender as well, but then I want him to be more cautious and allow Alaba to be a bit more expressive. That's why I just picked this up. And then basically that's the tactic. Mbappe is going to do all the running, and then Benzema on this other side is going to be a bit more creative and a bit more cautious and try and fashion out chances for him. For everybody else, he's playing like a deep lying forward, which is his natural role really, but I just wanted to be a bit more expressive. That's why I asked him to play as a complete forward on support. Alternatively, this would be Jovic. That's Benzema will play in the advanced forward role, and then I have Luka Jovic. Where is he now? Before he starts crying. Luka Jovic used to cry that I don't normally put him. Where is he? Yep, Luka Jovic can play as the complete forward and support, and then Benzema as attack. Well, that's basically how the tactic was set up, and I had to now set up a set piece for it. That's why I now use this video to try and create a quick set piece to show you how you can create set pieces for your team in Football Manager 2022. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like on it and also to subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys much later with more videos, and I'll see you soon.